I was washing the pie plates after Sunday lunch when my daughter-in-law reached into my cardigan pocket, pulled out my house keys as if rescuing a coin from a fountain, and said with that bright, brittle smile she saves for Instagram, that she would hold on to these so nothing gets lost in the shuffle. She held them up like a trophy in front of my son, my grandkids, and two of their friends from the startup who had come for cobbler. My son laughed weakly, the kind of laugh that asks for permission. The kids looked confused. I stood there with a wet dish towel in my hands, feeling the strange vertigo that comes when the ground moves but your feet don't. Then Kira kissed my cheek and announced a trial week at their house because everyone agrees you shouldn't be alone anymore. And the room's silence made it sound like they'd taken a vote without me. If you've done invisible work your whole life, if you've poured coffee for parent-teacher nights, memorized the allergy lists for your grandchildren's classmates, and kept a whole family calendar hanging straight, then you know the special sting of being treated like a mislaid object. I am an ordinary widow, 68. A retired public school librarian who still labels the flower jars and keeps the warranties in a blue file marked, just in case. I volunteer twice a week at the church book nook, I cut coupons, and every spring I plant the tomatoes too early because I like the risk. When my husband, Charlie, died, I paid off the bungalow slowly and alone, telling myself that peace is not a dramatic thing. It is a paid property tax bill and the sound of your own kettle. None of that looks impressive on a family chat. That afternoon, as I folded napkins that nobody thanked me for washing, I noticed a check stub tucked in my cardigan sleeve. The payer line said, Hearth and Harbor Care Trust, and the amount, $2,000, had been drafted from my account 3 days earlier. I hadn't authorized any trust, care, or otherwise. The memo line read retainer. Under the sink I keep a shoebox of odd receipts in case something someday makes sense. I added the stub and felt my hands shake not from age but from insult. On my way to fill a dish with the last of the peaches, our neighbor Ruth, church treasurer, forever helpful, always with the good pen, knocked on the back door and breezed in, insisting on helping me pack. "We'll get you comfy," she said, as if I were a sweater to be folded. She asked casually whether I'd ever considered adding someone to my online banking, for safety. I told her no. She'd sked softly and changed the subject to the quilt auction. Ruth is a person people thank in public. I have handed her the microphone at more than one potluck. That evening, when I came home from my son's house to collect nightgowns and medication, I set the kettle and found a folded slip of paper taped to the inside of the cupboard. In tidy block letters it said, "Check your power of attorney." Then a small hand-drawn smiley face, the kind a child makes to pretend things are fine. I stood in the dark kitchen with the kettle whistling and wondered who had been in my house, and which part of me exactly they thought wasn't paying attention. The next morning Ruth texted that she could drive me to the bank to make arrangements, but my phone buzzing against my palm felt like a fire alarm, and I let it go to voicemail. When I opened my mailbox, an envelope from my credit union waited with a lightness that frightened me more than any red notice could. I tore it open on the porch. Inside was a letter confirming a change in digital access privileges, and a pending wire transfer scheduled for Friday. At the bottom was a line in small print. "Please contact us if this change was not initiated by you." I read it twice, looked up at the row of bin-day trash barrels, and realized I didn't have my keys. As I turned to go ask Ruth to let me into my own house, imagine it, I saw our HOA's quiet maintenance man Deshaun walking past with the leaf blower. He glanced at the letter in my hand, then at my face and lowered his voice. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "if anything looks wrong with your mail, you should check your informed delivery. People don't always know who's watching the mailboxes." The blower hummed back to life. I tucked the letter against my chest like a passport. The trial week was more of a parade of indignities than a trial. Kira had set up a cot for me in their den with a second-hand baby monitor perched on a shelf. She laid out a pill organizer that contained the wrong vitamins, then asked loudly, while her friend was within earshot, whether I had started forgetting words. She added me to a group chat titled Mom Care Plan, where she posted a color-coded schedule and a photo of my reading glasses lying on my own kitchen counter with the caption "Found at her place." Each night, my grandson would bring me tea and sit on the floor to tell me about his book report, and each night Kira would walk in mid-sentence and announce she needed him for a quick thing, as if conversation were a luxury. On Wednesday at the grocery store, the cashier who knows my coffee brand asked whether I was excited about moving to that nice community. The man behind me, Mr. Green, who goes to the same barber Charlie went to, tilted his head and said, "Good for you, Marion, you did enough for everyone." I nodded, put the bread carefully at the top of the bag, and stepped out into a cold gust that felt like a shove. By the time I reached the car, my face was wet. That evening, Kira plunked a folder on the kitchen table and called it a gift to make things easy. A quitclaim deed transferring my bungalow to my son, and a durable power of attorney naming Kira as my agent for convenience. She had highlighted parts in pink. "It just streamlines things," she said, tapping her manicured finger against the notary tab. "Otherwise, probate is a nightmare." My son poured himself a large drink and avoided my eyes. "We found a notary who can come Saturday," Kira added. "So if we can sign before church, it's done." I'm a librarian. I read things. I read the deed, and I noticed the word immediate. I read the power of attorney, and I saw that gifts were allowed without limits. I kept my voice steady and asked for a few days. "Of course," Kira said, smiling too quickly, and slid a second paper across. A family care agreement she had downloaded, promising that I would pay the household $2,000 a month for room, board, and time. She had typed my name in a font that looked like confetti. The rule of the world presented itself as printouts in small print. A quitclaim deed, once signed and notarized, is hard to unwind without proof of undue influence. A durable power of attorney does not require me to be incompetent. It only requires me to have signed it. If a person acting as agent under POA makes gifts to themselves, it's legal in our state only if the document explicitly permits it. And that Care Trust retainer had already left my account. On Thursday, the bank called to confirm the pending wire to Hearth and Harbor Care Trust and asked me to verify the device used to schedule it. The young woman on the line sounded nervous, as if she were calling her own grandmother. I told her I had not authorized any such thing. She put me on hold and came back with a measured voice. "Mrs. Ellis, would you be able to come in tomorrow? And please bring any documents you've been asked to sign." When I said yes, she lowered her voice and added, "If you can safely get here alone, that would be best." Friday morning, I borrowed my neighbor's spare key, bless Mr. Patel for having a key for me, and gathered my blue just-in-case file, the care agreement, the deed, and the power of attorney. As I was leaving, I nearly tripped on a cardboard box on my porch labeled donation. Inside were my late husband's Army medals, my recipe cards, and the quilt my mother stitched when I was 20. On top sat a sticky note in Kira's neat lettering. "Declutter equals less stress." At the bank, the assistant manager, whose name tag said Sophia, led me into a glass-walled office. She asked if I'd noticed any changes to my online access. I gave her the credit union letter. She pulled up my account and frowned. Then she printed something and slid it across the desk. A log of devices that had accessed my account in the past month. One was my old laptop. One was an iPad registered to an email with my last name and a number. "I do not own an iPad." She pointed at a note beside the iPad entry. "Added as view-only user by Rutha." My cheeks burned. Ruth's initial is a Anderton. Sophia canceled the wire, placed a freeze on any third-party transfers, and helped me change my access. When I told her about the papers, she asked whether I would consider a different kind of protection. She described a revocable living trust with a requirement that any gifts over $500 must be co-signed by an independent fiduciary of my choosing. I asked her to slow down and write it out for me. She did, then handed me a list of legal aid clinics that help seniors at no cost. "I can't give legal advice," she said, "but I can tell you that putting conditions in writing is like building a fence you can see." When I returned to my son's house, Kira was already waiting in the kitchen with the notary appointment confirmation on her phone. She had baked lemon bars. She hugged me as if I were a guest of honor. I looked over her shoulder and saw that my blue, just-in-case file was no longer where I had left it on the den chair. I searched my bag twice. I looked at the mantel. "Lose something?" Kira asked lightly, licking powdered sugar from her finger. I felt the bottom of my world tilt, not from fear but from the rude confidence it takes to steal a widow's file from her own lap. At dinner, my son said, "Mom, this is for the best," and my grandson asked whether I'd come to his soccer game, and Kira waved her fork and said, "We'll see, things are busy." When the dishes were done, I texted Sophia, the assistant manager, asking if she could email me the device log and the wire cancellation. She responded with a single line, We'll handle tomorrow carefully. Bring someone you trust. That night, I lay on the cot and listened to the baby monitor crackle with my own breathing. I had reached that quiet, dark point where humiliation burns off like fog, and there is only the map of what must be done. The notary was coming in the morning. The folder was gone, and someone had left a note in my cupboard telling me to check my power of attorney. At 4 a.m, when the house was a quiet engine of sleeping bodies, I slipped my feet into shoes, took my purse, and walked to the all-night diner that smells like bacon at every hour. I dialed the number on the legal aid list and left a message. Then I tried another number, Elder Law Center. Press 1 to schedule. Press 2 if there's a risk of exploitation. I pressed 2. A woman picked up on the first ring, said her name was Ms. Jo, and listened without interrupting while I told her about the letter, the keys, the folder, the trial week, and the lemon bars that tasted like a bribe. Ms. Jo met me at 9 at her office above a nail salon. She was younger than my daughter would have been if I'd had a daughter, and she did not treat me like a mislaid object. She explained that I didn't have to refuse everything to stay safe. I could accept help and still keep control by limiting it in writing. She drafted a narrowly tailored, time-bound power of attorney naming my friend Lorraine as agent for medical emergencies only, effective upon certification by my primary care doctor. She wrote a short addendum to the family care agreement that inserted one sentence. Any gifts or transfers over $500 must be co-signed by an independent fiduciary chosen by Marian Ellis, and failure to obtain co-signature voids agent authority. Make them sign their own fence, she said, sliding the addendum toward me. If they won't, that's your answer. We drove to my primary care clinic where Dr. No, who once saw me through a shingles vaccine, evaluated me calmly and documented that I was competent. I asked for a copy. She gave me 2. We also stopped by the HOA office. I asked the manager whether our common area cameras caught the mailboxes. He nodded and called Deshawn, who brought up footage from Tuesday afternoon of a woman with a black tote bag, Kira, standing at my mailbox, glancing over her shoulder and removing envelopes. I felt a small, fierce surge of clarity. I asked for copies. The manager hesitated, then printed photos with timestamps and placed them in a manila envelope for the record. By noon, the outline of my plan had a shape. Say yes to their care. Insist we do it by the book. Capture in writing every place their interests conflicted with mine, and let that conflict become a lamp everyone could see by. If Kira believed the world rewarded those who controlled the narrative, I would invite a larger audience. At home, I found the family care agreement on the counter, the signature line glowing with pink highlighter. I smiled, set out 2 pens, and taped my one-sentence addendum to it. When Kira came in from a call, she put a hand on my shoulder and asked whether I was ready. I kept my voice even. I am happy to sign this, I said, with this sentence added. She read it, went still and laughed, not a friendly laugh. That's not necessary, she said. We're family. Then it won't bother you, I replied, and I lifted a pen. She stared, then sighed, performed a performance of magnanimity, and signed beneath my sentence. She did not know that she had just built my fence. We scheduled the notary for the next morning instead to make sure everything's perfect, she said, which was her way of gathering reinforcements. That evening, as I made cocoa for my grandson, my son drifted in and out of the den like a man in a room where something is being said about him. You know I love you, Mom, he mumbled, then reached for the baby monitor and pretended to adjust it so he could avoid my eyes. I watched his hands, my boy's hands, now a man's, and I allowed myself exactly 3 seconds of longing for the uncomplicated weight of the infant he had once been. Then I put the cocoa down and checked my purse for the copies of the device log, the wire cancellation, and the mailbox photos. The blue just-in-case file was still gone. At 10, a text flickered from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I processed the online donations for church. Something is off with the care trust payments. Meet me tomorrow before the potluck. It was signed, a friend. My heart climbed into my throat and stayed there. In the quiet after midnight, a drawer in the den thumped shut. I stepped into the doorway and saw Kira whispering into her phone in the dim light. She looked up, started, and smiled too wide. The next morning, I opened my purse to leave for the church and found the wire cancellation printout missing. In its place was a lemon bar, wrapped in wax paper, sugared like a bad joke. Our church potluck is a reliable circus. Casseroles arranged like parade floats, toddlers running under tables, and the sound of folding chairs humbling grown adults. Ruth held the microphone with her practiced warmth and thanked the volunteers for their generous hearts. Kira stood near the dessert table, glancing at her phone. My son looked as if his tie was too tight. I had invited Sophia from the bank for coffee, Ms. Zhou as a friend, and Deshawn to fix a wobbly table. They arrived within 10 minutes of each other, ordinary and unassuming. I also invited Mr. Patel because he was the kind of man who doesn't talk during movies. Before Ruth could announce the quilt raffle, a young woman with a shy posture touched my elbow. "I'm Lena," she whispered. "I help Ruth with the donation platform. I noticed a recurring charge from your account to Hearth and Harbor set up by an email that doesn't match the church logins. The first payment came the same day Ruth changed the PayPal password. I didn't want to accuse anyone, but..." She trailed off and handed me a printout with columns and dates. Her fingers trembled. "I could get in trouble for taking this out of the system," she added, looking at her shoes. "Thank you," I said. "You did the right thing by bringing facts." She nodded, swallowed, and disappeared into the line for potato salad. The small bravery of her made my chest ache. When Ruth called my name to thank me for embracing this next chapter, I stepped to the microphone and smiled at the room I have poured coffee for, sat with through baptisms and funerals, and quietly kept stocked with napkins. "Before we cut the pies," I said, "could we do something unusual and read some documents together?" A ripple went through the room, the delicious, terrifying energy of a plan deviating from the script. I laid the family care agreement on the table with my addendum. I placed next to it the device log Sophia handed me in an envelope, the wire cancellation Sophia had brought another copy, the mailbox photos Deshawn printed with timestamps, and Lena's spreadsheet. Ms. Zhou stood at the edge of the stage, arms crossed, not speaking, simply present like a lighthouse. I addressed Kira first. "You asked me to sign a quitclaim deed and a power of attorney this morning," I said. "Before we do that, we should be honest about how money has been moving." I picked up the device log. This shows an iPad added to my account by a user named Rutha. I looked at Ruth, who smiled in that way that asks the room to be reasonable. "This is a screenshot from our HOA cameras," I continued, holding up Deshawn's photo of Kira at my mailbox. "And this is a report from our church donation platform that shows the Hearth and Harbor Care Trust pulling funds from my account using credentials that do not match the church records." Ruth laughed softly and stepped forward. "Oh, Marion," she said, putting one hand to her chest. "That was me helping to set up automatic giving. You asked for it, remember? It must have gone to the wrong place. Easy fix." Sophia cleared her throat. "The Hearth and Harbor Care Trust receiving the funds is an LLC registered last month, not a charity. The owner of record is Anderton Family Services." She looked at Ruth. "We verified it before we stopped the wire." Ruth's face did not move, but her voice dropped a note. "There's no need to embarrass yourself," she said to me like a slap in a whisper. "You'll be much safer if you let Kira manage things." Ms. Zhou stepped onto the stage. "I'm an attorney," she said, calm and even. "If anyone here has been acting as a fiduciary for Mrs. Ellis, even informally, that person owes her loyalty and must avoid conflicts of interest. Taking funds into a family LLC fails that test. Also, the family care agreement Mrs. Ellis signed includes a co-signature requirement for any transfer over $500 by an independent fiduciary of her choosing." She tapped my one-sentence fence. "Any transfers without that co-signature are unauthorized and void." Kira's hand flew to her mouth, then dropped. She reached for the care agreement, skimmed it, and paled when her eye hit the line she had initialed. Across the room, my son stared at the HOA photos as if he were translating a language he had pretended he did not understand. Then Kira's phone buzzed on the dessert table. Deshawn, who had been quietly standing near it, glanced down because the screen lit up with a text preview. He looked at me, then at my son, and leaned over to show him. My son read, and his shoulders slumped, the kind of slump that admits what it's been hiding from. The text from Ruth read, "Make sure she signs today. The buyer wants to list by Tuesday before she gets stubborn." "Buyer," I said softly, and it was the only moment my voice wavered. Kira fumbled, then blurted the lie she had been practicing. "We found a cash buyer as a backup in case you changed your mind," she said. "It's what families do." We handle things. Did family handle this? I asked, holding up Lena's spreadsheet. Or this? I gestured to the mailbox photo. Sophia lifted the last envelope. There's one more thing, she said, looking at Ruth. Your LLC attempted to add itself as a payable account via the church's donation platform API. The bank flagged it because the API key had been changed from an IP address at Ruth Anderton's home. That is why I came today instead of calling. Silence sat down with us. It took the shape of the folding chairs, the paper plates, the way the sunlight through the church windows made dust into confetti. Then Mr. Green from the grocery line, of all people, said, "This is theft," in a voice that made no room for euphemism. What happened next was not dramatic. That is the point. Kira's face went flat, the way faces go flat when a mask is taken off. Ruth opened her mouth, closed it, and adjusted her cardigan as if she could adjust the last 5 minutes. My son rubbed his eyes and whispered, "Mom, I didn't know." Which was true in the way people protect themselves by not asking the next question. The notary, standing awkwardly near the punch bowl, quietly slipped her seal back into her purse. I placed the durable power of attorney Kira had wanted signed on the table, uncapped a pen, and drew a single neat line diagonally across it. Then I took out the narrow medical power of attorney MS. Joe had prepared, naming Lorraine, and signed with a steady hand. I handed the pen to Lorraine, who had appeared in the back like the friend who always knows when to come and when to leave. Then I held up the revocable trust document Sophia had explained and said, "I'll be placing my home into this trust, and for the record, any sale requires my notarized consent and the co-signature of my independent fiduciary. That is non-negotiable." Ruth found her footing and tried one last time. "Marion, dear," she said, voice syrupy, "let's not make a scene." I looked at her, then at Kira, and finally at my son, whose eyes were red. "The scene," I said, "made itself." I turned to Lena and Sophia and Deshawn and Ms. Jo and thanked them by name out loud, in front of everyone who had ever eaten my pies. And in that hush my grandson, bless his brave heart, walked up the center aisle, took my hand and said, "Grandma, can we go home now?" The bank filed a report. The Church Finance Committee voted that afternoon to suspend Ruth as treasurer pending an audit. She left without meeting anyone's eyes and did not take a lemon bar. Kira's startup quietly lost its angel when the buyer learned that the property she promised to free up capital wasn't hers to promise. My son slept on our couch for 2 nights and met with a counselor who specializes in families where caregiving is used as currency. He is making amends in the slow way that matters and no longer uses the word "we" to mean Kira. The family care agreement, with its neat fence of a sentence, kept any further retainers from leaving my account, and every time I sign a check, I think about how a person learns to return to her own handwriting. I moved back into my bungalow surrounded by the clatter and kindness of neighbors carrying boxes, repairing a loose gutter, and resetting the locks. I found my blue just-in-case file tucked under the den couch at my son's house, of course, and Mr. Patel made a solemn ceremony of handing me my spare key back. I recorded a simple notice of interest against my title so that a quick sale cannot happen in the dark again. Then I bought a fireproof safe that I keep in the bottom of a coat closet nobody thinks to open. After the dust settled, I began a small Tuesday morning circle at the library called Paperwork and Pie. People bring whatever scares them. Insurance letters, benefit forms, power of attorney templates, and we read out loud until the fear drains off and the words behave. Sophia stops by when she can with printouts about avoiding digital scams. Deshawn came and taught us how to set up informed delivery. Lena brought cookies and, to my great satisfaction, a new spreadsheet for the church with 2-factor authentication. We do not talk about karma. We talk about signatures and co-signatures and phones left on the counter recording when people say things they later say they didn't mean. We talk about fences you can see. As for the moral, I'm not going to wrap it in a bow you didn't ask for. The action was the moral, the one sentence in my own care agreement, the refusal to sign a paper designed to erase me, the choice to embarrass myself in a room that taught me to be polite. Dignity, it turns out, is not a speech. It is a signature placed slowly and reading line by line. Some evenings I still make the mistake of planting tomatoes too early. I stand at the sink with dirt under my nails and think about the anonymous note in my cupboard, the smiley face that made me laugh in a week when I had forgotten how. Sometimes I still don't know which part of me people expect not to be paying attention. If you are listening to this and you are folding a dish towel you wash for someone who won't notice, ask yourself one question that will echo longer than any moral. What fence can you write today that you'll be glad to see in the light?